We're 48 hours here until there's going to be a government shutdown. And so this Senate, there's a lot of magic that can happen potentially at the end, but they are going to have to move fast. Good morning, I'm Anna Palmer.
And I'm Jake Sherman.
And welcome to the Daily Punch, brought to you by Punchbowl News. It's Wednesday, January 28th, 2026. Let's get in the mix. Here are your Washington headlines of the day. Number one, Senate Republicans go deal hunting on government funding. Number two, Marco Rubio's Hill Gauntlet. And number three, AIPAC enters the 2026 midterm chat. All right, Jake, let's get into it. We are leading Punchbowl News AM with a pretty stunning stat here before we get into what is happening on the ground in the Senate about deal making, and that is around the 2025 threat index. In 2025, Jake, the U.S. Capitol Police investigated 14,938 threats to members of Congress, family, staff, and the Capitol complex, a stunning 57% increase from 2024. Those are some big numbers.
Huge. I mean, 57% increase is just stunning. And these numbers have been on a steady march for some time. In 2023, they were 8,000. 2022, they were 7,500. 2021, they were 9,625. So they did go down a little bit there. But you could say this, though. The congressional leadership has done some good things in helping USCP, the Capitol Police, protect members better. They have new funds to allow for better coordination with local officials. They've done a lot. But the ultimate solve here is not possible, which is hiring a security detail for 535 members of Congress, something they'll never do. We've written about that a good deal over the last, several years. But being a member of Congress is a dangerous job. It is, and it's unfortunate, it really is.
I mean, last night alone, Representative Ilhan Omar,
Yes.
the Democrat from Minnesota, attacked during a Minneapolis town hall. The alleged assailant was charged with assault. She did finish her speech following the incident, but just a stark reminder of, members want to be out there talking to their constituents, and the security situation that, kind of either from, as you say, funds have been allocated, things like that, but it's a real threat, not just a hypothetical.
Yes, it's horrible and wild.
All right, let's run to the top story this morning where all eyes are focused on Capitol Hill, which is, can the Senate figure out a pathway forward on government funding? Senate Republicans return to Washington. We write remarkably clear-eyed about the dismal state of President Donald Trump's harsh immigration crackdown. But now comes the hard part, navigating a procedural morass to rein in DHS and avert a government shutdown on Friday night. The devil's really in the details here, right? It's, Senate Republicans aren't saying, hell no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to make any changes, but making changes that are codified into law gets very complicated pretty fast.
The dynamics here are as follows. As you said, Republicans are, and as Andrew writes in the top, Andrew and Laura, the Senate Republicans recognize something has to be done, which is some reforms for the most part. Josh Hawley even says we're in a situation where this just isn't safe. It's not safe for anybody. It's not safe for bystanders. It's not safe for law enforcement. The question now becomes, how do you do that? How do you do that without shutting down the government? Because Senate Democrats are not going to accept executive actions. That's something we've been writing for the last couple of days. And Chuck Schumer said yesterday, we're not accepting executive actions. Now, the White House believes that the president has taken some good faith steps to de-escalate the situation by removing Greg Bovino, putting in place Tom Homan, saying he's going to de-escalate. He told Fox News last night or yesterday afternoon, evening, that he was going to de-escalate in Minneapolis. So they believe that he has taken his foot off the gas proverbially and is showing that he wants to make the situation better. But the question is, how do they do that? They have a couple basic options. They could, of course, amend DHS, take it out of this 6-bill package and amend it with whatever changes, whatever overhauls they want to make to DHS and ICE policy. That is really tough because I agree with Republicans that it's going to be real difficult to get that through the House, just for a million reasons. And some of those reasons are it's going to be difficult to get a rule, given all the anger in the House Republican Conference on other issues, including E-15 and H-2B visas and the SAVE Act. It's just, the House is a snake pit at the moment. That's number one. Number two is you could try to get Democrats to be okay with executive orders. I don't think that's going to happen. I just said that. And number three is you could say, okay, well, let's pass this bill. And there's another bill that's going to ride alongside that at some point soon that's going to have these reforms. That's also quite difficult. That's a difficult procedural thing to do. Once you take the changes out of this must pass bill, there's no guarantee that it gets into law.
Right.
And there's no guarantee the House could pass it. So there was some optimism from Brian Schatz, the Senate Democratic whip in waiting, who says that they think they could land the plane and all of that stuff. I'm waiting to see how they plan to do that. And I think any separate legislation that they put on the floor with these changes to DHS and ICE and CBP policies is going to face the same hurdles in the House that any other bill does, which is it's going to be difficult. And the Freedom Caucus is already upset, saying don't amend DHS. And so I just think it's all very difficult.
It's very difficult. But I mean, if you're Democrats, right, this is the moment to hold the line, to come up with some policy changes, to try to push it. They have maximum leverage and pressure, right? I mean, in terms of public sentiment, in terms of must-pass legislation. To your point, taking this out and the promise and the prayer of legislation in the future does not get them, politically and probably, procedurally what they're looking for. And so the question here is, Thune says, he's still waiting for Democrats to formalize their list of proposed changes to this DHS funding bill. I mean, the clock is ticking, right? I mean, we're 48 hours here until there's gonna be a government shutdown. And so this Senate, there's a lot of magic that can happen potentially at the end, but they are gonna have to move fast once these, Democrats kind of lay out exactly what it is that they want and what they think they can get. So stay tuned there. We will be covering every twist and turn on that. All right, Jake, let's go to the number 2 story of the morning. Political tensions over President Donald Trump's foreign policy will be focused squarely on Secretary of State Marco Rubio Wednesday morning, when he's going to be pressed to explain the decisions of a president hell-bent on flexing U.S. muscle abroad. This is interesting because oftentimes when you think of a former colleague coming back to the Hill, they get a warm reception. People want to, they can be pretty jovial. It's not as if they're facing people that they didn't used to work with, but Marco Rubio is going to be getting some intense questioning from Democrats, certainly, and maybe even some Republicans.
Yeah. The questions are going to be as follows, right? Like Venezuelan oil. What are we doing in Venezuela? What is our plan? What is our plan for governing? Why did you brief the oil companies about the Venezuelan operation before you briefed Capitol Hill? But yes, he's going to have backup from Republicans, especially Jim Risch, the Idaho Republican who is the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And Risch says, according to his remarks, after our lengthy engagement in the Middle East in years past, many Americans are concerned about forever wars. I know this administration is laser focused on avoiding these experiences. So that's something that will be a main focus. Why is the United States dragging the military into another potential conflict? And what would it take for the administration to put troops on the ground in Venezuela? And can you guarantee that it won't? Chris Murphy told our Anthony, Brianna, and Andrew, I don't know which one he told this to, but we need some visibility on what's happening with this oil. This is crazy. The American people need to understand who's making money off of that and why Congress isn't involved. So this is going to be a bumpy hearing for Rubio. Chris Van Hollen said the Rubio MAGA lobotomy is complete, and that is quite the phrase.
Quite the quote.
Indeed.
The quote. All right, let's run to the number 3 story of the morning. AIPAC making its first big 2026 move. Obviously a major player when it comes to fundraising and spending. Its super PAC is dropping $1.5 million and counting to defeat former Representative Tom Malinowski's New Jersey comeback bid in a special election next week. What's interesting here, of course, is that AIPAC and Malinowski have previously been aligned.
They were cool, yes, but UDP, the United Democracy Project, which is the AIPAC-affiliated super PAC, said that it is now spending against Malinowski because he talks about conditioning aid to Israel. And Patrick Dorton, a spokesman for the group, said that's not a pro-Israel position. Malinowski said it's a mainstream position in the pro-Israel Jewish community, but AIPAC is sending a message to the party that it's not enough to be pro-Israel. You have to toe the line 100%. AIPAC's UDP has been engaged in a lot over the last couple of years, and conditioning aid to Israel has become a more acceptable or a more mainstream, let's call it, position among some Democrats. It is not AIPAC's position. And what AIPAC is doing here is effectively spending against a candidate who is not espousing their position, which is not terribly unusual. But this will be an interesting race, Anna. It's a Democratic seat to replace Mikey Sherrill, now the governor of New Jersey, and it'll also give Democrats another seat in the House, which Republicans, of course, will have to will suffer from.
All right, one quick thing before we let you go. Please join us February 5th. I'm going to be in conversation with Senator Shelley Moore Capito, the Republican from West Virginia, talking news of the day and federal funding for medical research and cures across diseases and conditions, including Alzheimer's disease. A lot to cover there. You can RSVP at punchbowl.news/events. As always, thanks so much for listening. We appreciate it. If you like the Daily Punch, share it on social media, tell your friends. It's the best way for folks to find out about us. And of course, you can go deeper and sign up for our free morning newsletter at punchbowl.news. Have a great day and stay safe, everybody.